Before we start, we will just have to give you a little bit of reminder for the digital safety of everyone. So let me share my screen first. Before we start, we will just have to give you a little bit of reminder okay, so these are our webinar reminders. First things first, this webinar will be recorded, and if you wish to continue with the webinar as it is being recorded, kindly click on accept. Okay, we'll be keeping tab of the proceedings for the webinar for documentation purposes. You are free to leave if you feel uncomfortable that this session will be recorded, but do not worry because these are only for documentation purposes. Thank you so much. Next. Mute your microphone during the talk. We want to make sure that the speaker's voice is clear to everyone. We may opt to remove you if you don't follow these requests, and kindly refrain from taking pictures or videos of the talk. If you do so, you will be held accountable for data privacy violation. If the copy you created leaks into the internet outlets, we wish to keep your identity as well as other participants' identity private, and that's the main reason why. Okay. And then if you have questions while the talk is ongoing, you may put them in the chat box. If you have thoughts as well, no, while the talk is ongoing, you may put it in a chat box. After the talk, you will have a chance to ask your questions. We wish for you to only use the chat box rather than voice because of our time constraint. And lastly, do not forget to evaluate because your inputs in the webinar will help us improve our next webinars. Please do not forget to evaluate. I may reiterate, after you have answered the forms, you will then be given a proof of your participation in a form of a certificate. Okay, so I do hope that everyone is ready. I'm also very ready. Even if I have already listened to Sir Sip's talk last time, I know there will still be more to learn during this session. So I am very excited to be with you and to listen and to learn a bit more about empathetic listening. Michael, I will give the floor to you. Michael, kindly introduce our speaker for today.
Yes, hello. Good afternoon again, everyone. So, narinig pa ba ako, Ms. Je?
Yes, Michael, clear.
Yes, so again, thank you for joining us here. So it is my honor to introduce our resource speaker this afternoon. He finished his bachelor's and master's degree from the University of San Carlos and a registered guidance counselor. He is trained in psychosocial support conducted by the Israel Trauma Coalition. He has been providing mental health and psychological first aid to survivors in the aftermath of disasters, like the landslide in Ginsagon, St. Bernard, Southern Leyte in February of 2006, the earthquake in Bohol last October of 2013, and the Typhoon Yolanda in areas of Leyte, San Remigio, Medellin, and Tabogon in November of 2013. At present, he is one of the guidance services specialists in UP Cebu. He is the UP Cebu representative to the Ugnayan ng Pahinungod, Committee on Psychosocial Emergency Services of the UP system, along with other committee works in the university. Everyone, let us give a virtual applause to Mr. Cipriano Oleta. Good afternoon, Sir Sip.
Good afternoon, Sir Sip.
Good afternoon.
Okay, we are very excited to have you with us today, Sir Sip. And It seems that your talk from the last time really had a public demand for a rerun. And we are very happy that you actually said yes to the re-invitation.
Okay, thank you for the invitation, and thank you, Michael, for that introduction to the participants. But before that, I would like to ask the participants in terms of How are you feeling today? Can you write down your answers in the chat box? How are you feeling today?
Stressed out daw, Sir Seb.
Yes?
My feeling handsome at pretty, Sir Seb.
You may write down your answers in the group chat box. Okay. Okay, feeling blessed, excited, feeling great, good, feeling well. Great. Tired dahil walang bakasyon. Yeah, that's feeling happy. Sa wakas nakasali rin. Okay. Awesome. Feeling great. I'm beyond blessed po because I was able to join this webinar. Okay, thank you. Feeling hungry. Okay, you might take some snacks. Yes, yes. Today we celebrate the Ninoy Aquino's Day. Mayo po, sir. Okay. Okay, sige. So, oh yeah, may kuryente na kasi nag-burn out 12 o'clock, midnight
po.
until 4.
Yes
I
po.
think until 4. Okay, so at least may kuryente na. Okay, sige. So, at this time we have 300 participants. There are so many participants. Okay. Okay. Can we have a profile of the group? How many coming from Luzon? Can you put a reaction, a heart, if you came from Luzon? Here. Look. Okay. So location.
Marami po tayong galing sa Luzon, Sir Sip.
Wow.
Meron din po tayong galing sa abroad.
We
Welcome
have
po.
we have 2.
Yes.
Okay, so the profile of the participants this afternoon, more or less there are. It's going up. So 77% coming from Luzon and 14% coming from Visayas, 8% coming from Mindanao, and 1% coming from abroad. Which country? Okay, so so those are the profile of the participants this afternoon. But before that, I asked you how are you feeling? So that there were a lot of feeling coming out. Happy, blessed. Meron ding nagpasalamat kasi meron ng kuryente, din nakasali na ngayon because before it was controlled in terms of the participants because there are so many. Okay, now those feelings are very important. Why? Because our emotions plays an important role in our life. Because of that feelings, we tend to look for someone to share. It could be you're happy, or it could be you're sad, whatever feelings that you have. You like to look for someone and connect, try to share. That's our topic for this afternoon. Okay, allow me to share my presentations. Okay. Okay, so my presentation is about empathic listening or empathetic listening. More or less, there's the same. For the topic, I would like to share the communication process, the levels of listening, the qualities of empathic listener, the don'ts and don'ts of empathic listening, the difficulties and therapeutic value of empathic listening. Okay, for the objectives of this webinar, at the end of the presentation, the participants will be able to understand the basic concept of communication process, identify the do's and don'ts of empathic listening, then learn to appreciate the importance of empathic listening in building interpersonal relationships, and apply empathic listening in strengthening interpersonal relationships. Okay, now, so it is our innate that we need to establish a relationship to connect with other person and to understand and accept it through communication. That's why the feelings that we have, the emotions that we have is very important, because through that, we try to connect. And that is one of the most innate needs in any relationship. Now, communication as defined by Merriam-Webster is the process of using words, sounds, signs, or behaviors to express or exchange information, or to express your ideas, thoughts, feelings to someone else. So that's how Merriam-Webster defined communication. So communication with empathy is important listening skills. According to Carl Rogers, empathy is considered a core condition in counseling and can be defined as communicating the sense of caring and understanding. So we try to understand now in terms of the communication process. So in communication, there is a sender, at the same time, a receiver. Now, the sender will try to send message to the sender. Okay, you try to develop that idea. Try to encode from that idea. You try to encode. You try to so after encoding, you try to transmit. At this time, you have cell phones. You can text. You can have a video call. You can call, and there are so many ways how to transmit that idea coming from the sender. Then the receiver receive the message and try to decode. Decoding means you try to give his own interpretation based from the message received from the receiver. Then you try to transmit it back to the sender. The sender receives the message. So that's the flow, and try to understand the communication process. Now, I would like to share with you a picture, then try to decide what did you see from the picture. Okay, so have you seen the picture?
Yes po, affirmative.
Okay, so you try to look at the picture. What did you see? Okay, so okay, so karamihan po ang nakita is a couple. Okay? Sabi nga, parang medyo may pagabastos yung picture. Now, that's one of the things in terms of communicating. I try to communicate that I'm sending this picture, that this picture are dolphins. There are 10 dolphins. But when you receive the message, you look at it, then try to decode, you try to interpret, and your interpretation is a couple, a romantic couple. You see, that's the difference in terms of accepting, try to decode the message that we receive from the sender. So instead of sending the picture of 10 dolphins, it come out that when you receive, you try to decode, then naging couple. Bakit ganon? Okay, so we have to understand understand that this picture, because of some barriers, nagkaroon ng ibang interpretation. Okay, so what are the communication barriers? First, we have the personal barriers that arises in psychological, which includes our emotions. So our emotions, again, would play the important role in terms of receiving the messages coming from the sender. Our values in life, the poor listening habits, differences in education. Our self-image, maybe you look at yourself as lower or negative. That's why when you receive the message, it will be negative also. At the same time, our socioeconomic status. The other personal barriers is the physiological, which includes our hearing impairment, meaning there's something. It could be medical, that it could be inherited, whatever, that you cannot hear because something happened with your eardrum. Another barrier is what we call physical barriers. Barriers that occur in the environment, like a sudden distracting noise. Then the distance between people, the walls. So those are the type of physical barriers that would interfere in terms of communications. Another barrier is semantic barriers, the science of meaning. Like it arises from limitations in the symbols and differences of meaning. Like for example, meaning in Visayas, ang langgam ay lumilipad. In Luzon, ang langgam ay gumagapang pa. You see the difference? Langgam in Visayas, lumilipad. Langgam in Luzon, gumagapang pa. But there are also words na parang advance ang Luzon. Halimbawa, inihaw. Inihaw na baboy. Meaning, inihaw, something na cook. But inihaw in Visayas, kinakatay pa yung baboy. So those are things that in terms of semantic barriers, that sometimes there is misunderstanding because the meaning of the word is different. There are a lot of words from other regions that more or less the same, but the meaning of that word is different. Okay. So in communication, listening is very important. So listening is a process of receiving and interpreting the spoken word. It involves recognizing what is said and comprehending the message. It is very important that we have to understand the process of listening. Now, in listening, there are some levels. Okay? So, para bang mayroong level 1, level 2, and so on and so forth. So we have to understand the way how we listen, because listening is very important part in terms of relating, in terms of understanding. So the first level of listening is what we call the passive listening. In terms of classification, this kind of listening is the lowest level of listening. The listener is aware that the speaker is speaking, but understand little of what is said. So the listener pays little attention and catches only a few words. That's passive listening. Okay. The next level of listening is what we call responsive listening. At this level of listening, the listener gives the speaker verbal or non-verbal indicators that he or she is listening by nodding of head. But actually, the listener is not paying much attention. In terms of understanding, in terms of comprehension, this level is still low. Okay, then the third level of listening is what we call selective listening. The listener listens selectively. The listener will not try to, is not paying attention to the entire messages. Para bang try to pick up phrase that for him is very important, or that word or phrase, para bang he's interested, but the rest, never mind. That's selective listening. The fourth level of listening is what we call attentive listening. So the listeners are involved and is able to comprehend more information. Then the listeners try to provide feedback to the speaker by asking for more information. However, the listener is merely listening for his own selfish interest and are probing for some information because he perceives that the information is yielding some profitable value. Para bang you're listening only because there's something in that communication that you interest, that you perceive that this information is profitable one. The fifth level of active listening. So the listener engages not only their intellect in listening, but also their emotions. So meaning there's now engagement of the intellect at the same time the emotions. So the listener is asking the speaker to gain comprehensions, to understand the listener. The listener reflects his interpretations of what is being said back to the speaker. So there's now try to engage intellectually at the same time the emotions. And the last level, level 6, is what we call the empathic listening. So empathic listening is listening at its peak. It is the deepest level of listening. It differs from active listening in one important way. So listeners tries to step out of their own perspective and view things from that of the speaker. So meaning, in terms of understanding, the listener will try to understand the perspective of the speaker. It's not only understanding what the person is saying and feeling, but emphasizing with it and making effort to communicate his understanding to the speaker. Empathic listening requires listening non-judgmentally. Okay, so empathic listening is the practice of being attentive and responsive to others' input or others' sharing during the conversation. You see, the word is being attentive and responsive. It is a structured listening and questioning technique that allows one to develop and enhance relationship with a stronger understanding of what is being communicated. When we see it is a structured listening and questioning technique, so meaning there is a pattern, there is a way of how to ask so that you can gain more understanding from the speaker. Okay, so listening empathically entails making and emotional connections with the other person and give a more heartfelt response. It requires a listener to be considerate on the speaker's message. Now, there are some qualities of an empathic listener. Okay, so it's very important that we as individuals who are in the field of who are in the helping professions, maybe a teacher or a guidance counselor or a friend. So we have to understand that there are some qualities wherein we can say that you are an empathic listener. One of the qualities is your presence. When somebody approaches you, even though you are present, but sometimes our presence is not enough. So being a listener, it entails about being there, not only physical, but it is the whole person who is present with the speaker. Your presence is very important. Then the other one is compassion. Being a listener, being an empathetic listener, try to identify, try to understand. We try to put the shoes of other people, try to understand their feeling, try to look at the perspective of the speaker, being compassionate. Another quality is wisdom. People will come to you, share their concerns, share their difficulties, because they look at you as a person with wisdom, mature enough to understand their experiences. They understand that they will not be judged because you are mature enough to understand the listener, the speaker, I mean. Okay. Another characteristic is non-judgmental. So being an empathic listener means to refrain from criticizing the speaker, either out loud or through your thoughts. So being listener, we try to minimize criticizing, because the person who shares his concern needs your help, needs a helping hand, or need 2 ears, need a heart to understand their situations. Another characteristics is being trustworthiness. The person who shares his concern, his difficulties, trusted you that you will not share this information to other people. Trust you that they will respect, or you will respect what they have shared, because it is a privilege that you're able to hear or listen to the difficulties of the person. Another characteristic is being patient. Sometimes when our friend talk to us, share their problem, but would not go directly to the point. Sometimes, parang we have to force the person to open up, to share. It should not be like that. As empathic listener, we have to be patient because the person who experienced difficulty is, maybe it could be a great challenge to open up, to disclose his or her emotional experiences. So patience is very important. We don't have to force the person to open up. We don't have to force na they will tell you what happened to her or him. But we have to be patient. You try to let the person feel that he is welcome and you are there to listen to his concern. Now, in terms of guidelines of empathic listening, there are guides, there are ways or skills that we can practice in empathic listening. So there are 5 verbal skills that we have to practice when we apply empathic listening. We have the paraphrasing, we have the reflecting, clarifying, summarizing, and positive stroking. One by one, we try to understand how to use these skills, the verbal skills in empathic listening. Okay, for the paraphrasing. So paraphrasing is expressing the meaning of the message coming from the speaker in the words of the listener. So meaning when the speaker or someone shares to you, when you paraphrase, you try to give your own words, reflecting the essence or the content of what was being said. So we have example. Maybe a student coming to you and shared to you his feeling in terms of the exam that he was taking. He said, "It is so disturbing to learn that I failed in the final exam in my subject. I might be expelled from the school this year, and I don't like the thought of it." So as a listener, you try to paraphrase, and it goes, "You are disturbed that you might be expelled the school because you failed the final exam." So that's paraphrasing. Okay. Then reflecting. You try to reflect the feelings. It's when the listener expresses the feelings. Then the listener tries to perceive the emotional states and respond in a way that demonstrates an understanding of the expresses emotional state. Like there's someone who tried to work harder so that he will be promoted. But then what had happened? Someone was being promoted instead of him. So the expressor said, "Is it not fair? I was supposed to get that promotion at work. I had worked hard for it. I have been loyal to the company for years. I was situated for the supervisor's position. And then this young whippersnapper arrived and everyone became deferring to him for leadership." So when you apply that skills, you said, "You are angry and discouraged. You devoted years to the company and did all the right things, so you would get a position that was given to someone who is younger and less experienced. Okay, another skills, that's clarifying. Okay, clarification responses are appropriate when listeners are uncertain about something that the expressor has said. Clarification response also help expressor achieve the personal clarity. So there are some examples of how to use the skills in clarifications. I'm not quite sure I understand what you're saying. So that's, parang you try to ask again, express yourself that you are not sure if you understand what the person is saying. Then you try to request, can you tell it again? Or I don't feel clear about the main issue. So you are not clear about the main issue. Or you say, when you said, so something being said, what did you mean? So try to understand, try to clarify the meaning. Okay, the next skill is summarizing. In summarizing, you try to use to condense or crystallize the main points of what the person shared. It is very important way for the listener to gather together what has already been said. Make sure that the expressor has been understood correctly and prepare the expressor to move on. Also, this is being used to close, like you talk almost an hour, then you have to summarize because you have to end your session. That's summarizing. Okay, so after the talk, after listening to the concern presented to you, after using the paraphrasing, after using the clarifying, it's now you have to summarize what had been shared. So this is how to summarize, meaning you try to capture all the things shared by the sharer, the expressor. As a listener, you said you are angry. You feel betrayed by your employer because someone with much less experience than you was given a position for which you work for many years. A part of you wants to walk away from the company because you are so unhappy. On the other hand, you can't imagine starting somewhere else with fewer benefits, less pay, and no seniority. You feel trapped in a situation that has become defeating. So that's in terms of summarizing what is being said, meaning you try to close now the session, then you try to summarize all the information being shared to you by the speaker. And another skills in empathic listening is positive stroking. So positive stroking meaning you try to verbalize of the positive aspects You try to recognize the speaker, the expresser, the one who shares his concern. As an example, you would say, I truly appreciate your patience in taking all these things. Maybe that the sharer, the person who shared this concern, has a lot of things, parang maraming dinadala. It's only then that I was able to open up. Or you would say, indeed, you are a responsible and thoughtful brother or a sister or a son or a daughter. So meaning you try to appreciate what has been being shared. Or you'd say, I appreciate your openness and honesty. Or you would say, it looks to me that you are strong in facing these challenges, this challenge. So meaning, again, after sharing, parang you like to close na the session, you have to give a positive stroke. You try to give the appreciation. You appreciate the person for being strong or for being open to his concern to you, or even say thank you for trusting me. Thank you for sharing those challenges you experience. It's one way of giving a positive stroke. Okay, but before that, meron pang mga tanong. Anyone?
Anyone have questions for Sir Sip before we continue? Okay. One of our participants, Sir Sip, said that in summarizing, it is really important, no, if there will be no added information when summarizing. Only major points that was given by the expressor.
Yes.
Okay. So, is positive stroking po ba the same as positive scripting? My question po.
What do you mean positive scripting?
Positive stroking po ba ay the same as positive scripting? So parang I think on how we script or how we create or develop the words or statements that we give to the expressor as a response. I think that's what they are meaning. But in positive stroking, if I'm not mistaken, Sir Sip, is to get the the positive aspects of what the expressors said. Like say for example, sa example niyo po yung I appreciate your openness and honesty, and then it looks to me that you are strong in facing the challenge. And these positive stroking mechanisms can be a good way to close the or to end the session.
Yes, yes.
So I think it's also the same. I think it's also the same as creating a positive statement to end the session, Ma'am Liza.
Okay, yeah, more or less the same, those things. Okay, so shall we continue?
Yes po, Sir Sip.
Okay, sige. So aside from the verbal skills in empathic listening, we have also the non-verbal, especially if for the face-to-face, but there are aspects with this that you can use for the like what we had through online. Okay, so but if it is online, there is no video, but still as the listener, you can practice this one. Okay, for the non-verbals, So we have the acronym SUFEN. Okay, S for the smile. If it is face to face, it's very important that you have to smile to the person, even if it's not face to face. You have to practice smiling and try to listen to the person, listening to his challenges in life. Still, even though you cannot see or you not be seen by the person sharing to you, at least we have to practice the aspect of smiling. Then, open posture. It is very important. When somebody shared his challenges in life, his difficulties, we have to show that we are there listening to them by having that open posture. We don't have to cross our arms, because crossing our arms would indicate that just it gives a message that just go on, but you try to protect yourself. Try to, as if you are listening, but not in the empathic way. So open posture. Then for the face-to-face, you can lean forward so that you can understand fully, but not too close. You can understand, you can hear what the person is saying to you. When someone would like to talk to me through online, but don't have any video, I can still practice being try to forward lean. You try to go closer to the laptop so that I can listen carefully whatever concern shared to me by the person. And for this touch appropriately, it can be used only for the face-to-face. So touch appropriately. Okay. Then again, for the eye contact, it's very important for the face-to-face or the online if there is video. Then the N is for you nod appropriately. You must be careful when to nod, because sometimes nodding it would cause or it would create problems. Like somebody would tell you, say, he would like to commit suicide and you nod. What will happen? So that person say it's okay because the person I'm sharing to a problem affirmed of my plan to do this kind of act. So you have to nod appropriately. So you have to listen carefully whatever information shared to you by the person. So all these skills, the verbal skills for empathic listening, at the same time, non-verbal skills, those responses would help the clients feel that he is being listened to, that he would feel that he's important because you listen to the person. Okay. And if there is the do's of empathic listening, there are also don'ts that we have to understand, that we have to be careful not to use these responses. Okay, so some of the verbals for the don'ts, we have the parallel talk, we have the generalizing, we have the spiritualizing, we have the counter disclosure, moralizing, we have the pacifying, and we have the advice giving. Okay, so these are some of the don'ts in responding to the person who is in need. Okay. So for the parallel talk, it's about communication lines which do not meet at any point. Like an example, that person is trying to share that he's disturbed to learn that he failed his final exam in his subject and is not too sure that he will be expelled from the school. And your response is, do you know the health situation in our country? So both of them are communicating, but then the topic would not meet each other. See, the sharing of disturbing of the, but because he failed this exam, and your response is about the situations, health situations in our country. This parallel talk. So what will happen to the communication? It will be cut. Okay. Generalizing. Making a general or broad statement by inferring from specific cases. Like for example, maybe your friends say, I was scolded by my wife because I went home late at night. Then generalizing, all wives are nagger. Okay, it's a general term. You were scolded by your wife, and the response of the person is, yeah, all wives are nagger. Okay. Is spiritualizing, the act of making something spiritual, infusing it with spiritual content. Like for example, a person went to you and say, I am worried about my son who is sick. And your response is, you pray for the fast recovery of your son. The answer is, you pray for the fast recovery of your son. At that time, is not appropriate because he tried to express his or her feeling. And you tell the person, you pray. Yeah, prayer is very important. And at that particular time, what the person needs is your listening ear. Telling them you pray would stop the person continue sharing. Counter disclosure. So instead of the speaker try to share his concern, and the listener is trying to open up his problem also, like this one. I am worried about my son who is sick. Counter disclosure, don't you worry. I don't even worry my situation. My mother and daughter are sick too. So mine is bigger. So don't worry. Mine is bigger. It's only your son. Mine is my mother and daughter. Counter disclosure. Yours is bigger than the person who shared his concern. Okay. Another don'ts for the in responding to the person who shared his concern is moralizing. Moralizing is giving a statement asserting that an action is right or wrong. Okay, so I hate my wife for nagging me. And the listener said, it's wrong to hate your wife. You have to love your wife. Okay, you try to moralize that hating his wife is wrong. Another don'ts and empathic listening is what we call pacifying. Pacifying is giving to soothe someone who is angry or upset by making concessions like this. Like the person, I am worried about my son who is sick. To pacify, don't you worry, it's okay. Your son will recover soon. Okay? So parang, how do you know? How do you know that it's okay? How do you know that his or her son will recover soon? So it's good to pacify, but at that time, again, what the person needs is a listening ears. So the next is advice giving. Telling others what you think they should do in a particular situation. Okay? So again, try to give the example of a person who has tried to give his time, try to work hard, try to become loyal to the company, so that that supervisor position will be given to him. But it was tricky because someone came and doon ibigay yung position. So that's how the person shared it to you. Now, as an advice, you would say you have to accept that the position is not for you. If you like, maybe you look for another job. That's advice giving. Now, sometimes, or if not sometimes, giving advice to a person is not a good thing to do. Because if you give an advice and he tried to follow your advice, but then he failed, he would come back to you and tell you, you tell me that this is what I do, but how come I failed? So meaning you are not to blame of the failure of the person because of your advice. So advice giving is a no-no in terms of listening to the person with predicaments or problems. Okay, so there are some don'ts also, the non-verbals, face-to-face, or even talking to a online, or if there's a video, or talking without any, just online talking without any video. Sometimes we feel that we like to yawn, but we have to do it carefully, because yawning, if it is face to face, somebody is talking this problem to you and you yawn, it would be parang the person is not open to listen to my concern. Or looking at your watch, you keep on looking at your watch when you talk, parang you are in a hurry. So as a result, I will not continue sharing my concern. Or sharp body shifts. You try to shift, you try to parang talikuran mo yung nag-share ng concern. So those are the non-verbals, the don'ts of empathic listening. Now, all these responses, the don'ts and empathic listening, the parallel talk, the generalizing, and other things, would tell the person that you are not interested to listen to the person. You try to cut the communication. You are not ready to listen to the person. So it's very important that we have to be aware as you try to listen to the person who has some concerns. because that person needs a problem, and we as a person who is willing to listen, we have to understand that those responses, those behaviors that we show or to the person who is sharing his problem would not help, or would not feel that that person is accepted, that person is recognized. It's because when he shared this problem, we give responses that is not appropriate in that particular time. So according to Stephen Covey, the biggest communication problem is we do not listen to understand. We listen to reply. It's true because parang we tend to choose how to respond, how to reply the person is sharing. We fail to listen, to understand the person because we are busy on how to give a reply to this person. So that's the biggest problem in communication. We listen because not to understand, but because we can give a good reply. Okay. So far, so good.
Opo, Sir Sip.
Any sharing at this time? Inputs?
We have some inputs coming from our participants. It's in the chat box, and there are also some. There are actually 2 questions right here. Okay lang po ba, Sir Sip?
Sige.
You want?
Okay.
Okay. So the first question is, empathetic listening is quite an undertaking for the listener. It's true, Sir Sip, no?
Yeah.
How can we make it enjoyable? I think this is more like, how can we make it healthy, especially for those who use empathetic listening for a living. I think this calls for like people like you, Sir Sip, who actually listens to a lot of your clients every day. How can we make it healthy or enjoyable for those who use empathetic listening for a living?
Okay. For us, as our work as guidance counselors, we listen to the students or a person who has some concerns. How to make it para bang how to make these skills or how to make this work become happy. Now, it's about commitment to help. Because if you're committed to help, you try to look for some skills wherein you can help other people. There are times that it becomes parang hindi na healthy, and you have to learn how to cope. You have to find ways and means how to parang unload also, because handling 2 or 3 individuals in a day is very difficult. It's so heavy for us. So we have to learn how to unload the feelings that we had after listening to that student or person who shared his challenges in life. So if you like to become happy with this kind of work, ask yourself, are you willing to help other people? Because if you feel that there is that feeling that you are willing to help other people, no matter how difficult it would be, because of that commitment to help, you will be happy. And you know how to unload, you know how to parang you have to let go of other things which are not helpful to you. Again, yung 3 estudyante or tao for a day is quite big enough in terms of handling yourself. So meaning you have to take care of yourself also. Because pag hindi mo you cannot take care of yourself, the stress, the burnout, it will parang you're tired of helping na, parang we are tired of doing these things. But if you learn how to let go of the emotions and try to recharge yourself, so that again you can face the challenges along the way because you have that commitment to help. Okay?
Okay, Sir Sip. So, second question po kasi we are still to continue, am I right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So, for the second question, how do we deal with a person who shares the same concern over and over? What are the proper way to say, to tell them that they did that without being rude or insensitive?
Yeah.
I think ito to, no?
Yeah, there are some people, there are some person, parang he's trapped. Parang pabalik-balik yung problema. Baka in terms of helping the person, in terms of deciding what to do with his concern, para baka hindi pa clear kung anong gagawin niya. So what we can do with that is, parang if you like to help the person, you have a sort of agreement on what to do. Like you said that if this is a problem, this would be the things we will be doing in order to solve the problem. And you have to discuss the possible solutions and let the person decide which one would be used to implement to solve the concern. If pabalik-balik, you have to again remind that this is what we are discussing. Now, if in case you cannot help the person, maybe in all honesty, you can say, can I refer you to other person who can help you? It's because I could not, you feel that I could not help you anymore. In all honesty, maybe you can refer that person and ask the person, is it all right to refer you to this person? Maybe this person can help you because nakita ko there is no improvement in dealing with your concern. Okay?
Okay po, sir. So, for everyone who are listening, empathetic listening or empathic listening is just one of the steps that is actually important in PSA. So, empathetic listening focuses on listening alone, not necessarily giving advices, but listening in order to understand the problem of the person or the expressor. So this is just one of the basic steps for PSA. If the person has in-depth problem, the us as listener can actually refer them to a more professional individual who can assess their problem well. So that is in the case of mental health. This particular seminar is focused on us knowing how to listen and to avoid advising that may lead to a different result for the espresso. So, okay. So, sir, there's one thoughts coming from the participants. He said that the difficulty in listening is that it is struggle to convince somebody that you are actually ready to listen and that you are prepared to provide options on matters that concern the person who expressed due to the preconceived ideas that the sharer might have towards the ones listening to them. And this is especially true, sir, no, if the person is actually not really keen on talking to, say, for example, a guidance counselor or their teacher when they have problems. So I think that's also one of the barriers that we have.
Okay.
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 Thank you so much, sir.
So we'll
Do you
continue?
want to continue?
Yes,
Okay.
sige. Okay, so after identifying the dose of empathic, the do's and don'ts of empathic listening, let's try to understand also that in listening, there are some difficulties, but at the same time, there is a therapeutic value of listening. So for the listener, the one who listens to the person, his concern, his difficulties, so these are some of the difficulties. As you try to listen, it entails dropping off one's mental luggage. So it is difficult because as individuals, we have also some mental luggages. We have concerns. And here comes a person who shares his problem. Now you have to draft up those mental luggages in order to listen carefully to the person. Otherwise, if you cannot listen well to the person, maybe you can ask, can you share your problem maybe tomorrow, or you can reschedule so that you can listen carefully to the person. Okay. Another difficulties, that's for the face-to-face. One must focus on the verbal and non-verbal expression of the person sharing his concern, because sometimes the verbal and the non-verbal, the body language, parang hindi nagkatugma. The verbal tells this way, but the non-verbal is the other way. So you have to focus and you have to clarify. So that's one of the difficulties, because you have to be keen observer when you listen to the person. Another difficulty is of listening. It disrupts our schedule. Parang you have already the schedule for the whole day, and here you are. Someone is approaching you and started to share his concern, and you have that schedule. So it disrupts sometimes, and you have to learn to be parang learn how to handle these things. And it's very true. If you learn to listen to a person, it is energy draining. Sometimes after the talk, parang you don't have energy anymore. But again, you have to learn how to express, how to do something in such a way that you will be recharged. So it's very energy draining if you try to listen to a person. And there is a risk of emotional involvements. Parang you get involved to the person. If you keep the person, parang there is something na within you and the person shared in terms of emotions. Now, you learn also to hate other people, the person, the one shared to you by the expresser. At the same time, it could be both will come close, because you learn, parang here you are, you listen to the person and the person feel accepted, and there's something that would develop. Okay, because listening is an art. It requires patience, practice, and perseverance. We are not used to it. We are not trained to do that. So we have to learn to practice using the different skills, how to paraphrase, how to reflect, how to clarify, how to summarize, how to give a positive regard. Sometimes parang we fail, but we have to practice again, to persevere, because as person who is involved or who is in the helping professions, it is very important that we have that listening skills. Now for the therapeutic value of listening. If someone listen to us, it alleviates loneliness. Okay? Because you feel that there is someone who is willing to listen to you. And you feel that being cared because somebody listen to you, ask you something, and try to connect. So it alleviates loneliness. Then it also gives sense of identification. Meaning, you can say, yeah, I am still a human being. I'm still a person who is accepted, a person who has the value because someone is willing to listen to me. And because being listened, it reduces defensiveness. Para bang you're open. You're not afraid to open up yourself. And it increases openness in terms of changes, in terms of possibilities, and in terms of sharing your problems. See, para bang there is now openness. There is now parang willingness to share because you are being listened to by this particular person. Okay, and also it gives a cathartic relief. Para bang, it's you feel lightened because you're able to release, you're able to let go or share your concern to a person, and that person is listening to you. And it affirms your value of the person. It affirms your respect. You respect yourself because people or someone listen to you and you feel being respected by that person. Your self-worth is increased. It's because someone is listening to you. So that's the therapeutic value of listening. It alleviates loneliness, gives sense of identification, reduce defensiveness, increase openness, gives a cathartic relief, and affirm our self-esteem, our self-respect, and worth. Okay. In the world today, we need a heart. Each one of us is giving that heart that you can use to help each other. Because so today, it seems that everybody has no time to listen. At times, we cried because nobody listens to us. And we are encouraged to use our 2 ears to listen to the person who has challenges in life. Because if we listen using our 2 ears, it will form a heart. That's why there is a listening heart. You're using the 2 ears. I think that's all for this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sir Safe. So it is always nice. One of our participants said, knowing someone is ready to lend an ear makes you feel that you are not alone. Okay, I repeat what is the main idea of listening is just to listen and to let the person express. It's not necessarily to solve a problem, but listening makes the expressor more open to solving his or her own problem.
Yeah, that's true, because one of my experience when I have a volunteer time in city jail.
Yes.
Yeah, when I went there, one of the inmate approached me and said, "Can we talk?" Okay, sige. But first is I was afraid because my concept of inmates is different. They are bad. So I was afraid for the first time. But when he started to talk, it took us almost an hour expressing his frustrations. And after that, he said, "Thank you for listening to me. For 25 years, I was listened by a person." I just say, I did not do, I just listened. I did not ask. I just listened to the person. But he was very thankful that somebody is listening to him for 25 years. It's a good experience also. You are there not to solve a problem, because when you started to share, try to parang open up, maybe they can find the solution or problem also. So listening is just like being there, not to solve his concern, but in a way you are helping him to solve by unloading his feeling, and you are there to listen his predicaments.
Yes, po, Sir Sip. That's actually a very nice experience that you have. It also rings true to me, Sir Sip, that if somebody listens and repeats the situation back to me, it's also a time for me to like find a solution because somebody actually showed the situation back to me. So yung parang pag sinasummarize na nila, mas madali kong nagigets, yun pala yung problema ko. Hindi ko nakita kasi viewpoint ko lang siya. Pero pag ibinalik sa akin, mas nakikita ko na, meron palang solution. Yung parang ganun. So, listening is it's a tedious job, but it's really helpful by just only listening.
Yes, it's
Okay, so,
true.
Sir Sip, ready for questions?
Yes.
We can accommodate few questions today. So I do hope that everyone is ready, and I'm very sorry if not all questions will be answered. Okay, so if not all questions can be catered, but we try as much as possible to cater. Okay. In Sir Sip, there's a question on advices. How do we give advices, or are we on a rightful place to give advices? If sa ako
Yeah.
alang place, Sir Sip, I don't give advices if the person really doesn't ask for it. Or if the person says that I just want you to listen. I just listen. But is it right to give advices?
If you try to recall the don'ts in empathic listening, advice giving is a no-no. Why? Because in advice giving, if the person would not be successful of your advice, you will be the one to blame. That's one thing. Okay. Another one is giving advice would not help the person, because each one of us has this intellect. We have this gift to understand the situation. Giving advice would help the person become dependent and will not work anymore, try to explore the possibilities. So advice giving is not is no for empathic listening. What you can do if maybe you can discuss things. You can discuss things, the possibility of how to solve the problem, rather than giving advices to the person. Okay? So
So discussion po.
yeah, you don't have to, it's very careful in giving, para bang we give advices. Okay? It's easy for us to give advices, actually. Para bang, if you try to look at it in the other side, para bang, to make it easier for us, but not for the sharer, for us, the listener. Para to stop that thing is, ito na ang advice, ito na, just use this one. Para bang, you're a doctor, try to prescribe, ito ang gagawin mo, ito ang gagawin mo. But now, what will happen if he fails because of that advice? So, in terms of responsibilities, he would not take personal responsibility of his action. Para bang, ipasa niya sa the person who is giving advice. Okay?
Okay, Sir Seth. That's a really good answer to the question. So rather than giving advices, help the person to discuss or find options to his problems to build some sort of resiliency, but do not give advices that the person do not really need. So this also makes sure that the person will not be dependent on you, and the person will be able to solve his or her own problems in the near future. So no dependency. So empathetic listening is only structured for listening and to help the person or the sharer to express himself or herself. Okay, so that's it. So if you are a listener, what are your tips on how to detach or set boundaries? Ano nga yung ginagawa niyo, Sir Sip, after niyo nagli-listen sa
In terms of, ano yung boundaries, sabi niya?
Yung parang kunin ko muna yung empathetic listening cup ko. Yung parang ganun.
Yeah, for the meantime, you try to find ways how to release all those experiences. You don't have to bring those negative emotions shared to you by the person, but you have to learn to, para bang, itabi muna, you have to let it go, so that, and then recharge activities that would help you. Maybe if you like to go some sports, then do so. If you like to, sa akin is, I like swimming, I like walking. That's the things that I try to do in order to take care of myself also. Parang ganun lang. Because pag parang if you keep all the information shared to you, later on, may stress ka, you'll burn out. And that's one thing that we try to try to do, because it would bring us down, and parang why I continue doing these things that myself need some help. So as a person, you know how to deal also with your concerns in life, because as a person, I have also some challenges in life, but I have to know how to handle in order to help other people also.
So unburdening, have
Yes.
some activities that will help you unburden and detach from the activity of empathetic listening, especially if that's your work.
Yes.
Okay, so next, when we know that the expressor or the sharer is at fault and got the situation wrong, and the expressor started to blame others and not, even if it's their own mistake, how do we approach this kind of situation? I think if the sharer is at fault, pero yung sa akin lang, Sir Sip, we just wanted to listen and summarize back that to the sharer. Am I right?
Yes. You have to listen to the person, because sometimes, parang in terms of taking responsibility, he passed that responsibility to other person. What you can do is try to listen and help him realize that what he's doing is he tried to wash his hands for the responsibility. Para bang you try to help the person realize na ang ginagawa niya is para bang hindi tama. But you don't have to say you are wrong. What you can do is you try to help the person using the skills, the different skills in empathic listening. You try to use this one and later on try to the questioning technique, try to help the person realize that parang he's running his responsibility by passing these things to other person.
Yes.
Sometimes there are individuals na parang ayaw talaga, then you have to respect the person's decision also. But we cannot force the person to own the responsibility.
So, dito po lalabas yung kung na-practice niyo po ba yung empathetic listening skills, especially yung questioning skills. Kasi magli-lead yun for the person to realize options for their problems or realize that it's actually them at fault. So, again, it's still listening, not giving advices or not giving a person some sort of vindication or judging, but rather giving a person a chance to share and to know and to assess the situation on their own. So, ganun po yun. Thank you po dun, Sir Sip. Actually, meron rin ako mga students rin. No? Kasi kay teacher, kailangan mo rin matuto ng empathetic listening. So, by questioning, the students will realize that there is a solution to the problem or that they are at fault. So, next po. Here we are. How do you motivate yourself in practicing empathetic listening? Because sometimes conversations are not interesting to the listener. And in many cases, some listeners might do unauthentic or not authentic listening at all. So especially po sa job niyo, Sir Sip, na kailangan nyo talagang mag-listen at some point to, let's say for example, students and teachers. How do you keep yourself focused to that person when you are listening?
Okay, so first things first, para bang, are you willing to listen? You have to ask yourself, because if there are some difficulties of listening, then maybe start telling, can we reschedule the session that we have? Because if you are not ready to listen, there's no point of you to talk to the person. Para bang, like there are some concerns that you are facing and you are not feeling well. So you have to be honest in terms of assessing yourself before you give that commitment to talk. Because if you have some problems in terms of the motivation of listening to the person, para bang kulang, or you are not motivated to listen to the person, it's because you have your own problem also, and you need someone to listen to also. So yan lang. You have to ask yourself, am I willing to listen? If not, then you have to reschedule the session that you have. You can motivate yourself to listen to others if you know how to handle also your problems. So first is you have to unload yourself, so that in unloading, there's a space for someone to, para bang may space na ma-accommodate mong yung isang tao na to talk to his concern also. It's not easy to do that, but we have to practice, because that's the way how to handle. We have to take care of ourselves also. If you're not motivated, ask yourself, why I am not motivated to listen to this person? What's happening with me? And be honest, because that's one of the characteristics of empathic listener. You must be honest to yourself also, in terms of your feeling, in terms of your experiences. You cannot help others if you cannot help yourself. Start with yourself. Help yourself so that you can help others also.
Thank you so much for that, Sir Sip. So as a listener and as a practicing listener also, it's always important to assess yourself whether you are ready to listen and ready to imbibe whatever the sharer is going to share. So in this case, if you are ready, you will have a clear mind to be able to summarize, clarify, and to give or help the sharer to find solutions or options for problems or for his or her current situation. So this, I think, Sir Sip, no, this particular webinar is actually a prelude to the other webinars that we will be having, right, Sir Sip, such as
Yes.
the psychological first aid. These empathetic listening is really the fundamental to all of them, most of them, really. And it's really, really important for us to practice it. We may not be able to master it directly, but being able to practice it with the correct skills. Okay, so that will be a very big help, not only to the family, but also to the group of friends that you have. And also if you're a teacher, to your students as well. Okay, I think that's the questions that we have right now, Sir Sip. Do you have a message to our participants today? As usual, we'll ask you message to your participants today.
Okay, sige. So first of all, thank you very much for joining this webinar. And I hope that you learned something from how many hours? 1 hour and a half. Diba, ma'am? From 1 hour and a half, I hope that you learned something. And I hope that whatever you learned, you have to use that one. Because using those things in our life would increase people who are willing to help in this world. We need each other. If you're a teacher, a friend, there's someone who needs to be listened. So, parang sayang yung learnings if you cannot apply what we learn. Doon lang siguro, apply what you learned from this webinar. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Sir Sip. Thank you so much, everyone. And always, as Sir Sip said, apply what you have learned from the webinars that we had. And when listening, I do hope that you will improve your listening skills by actually applying what Sir Sip said when it comes to communication and empathetic listening. Okay. Kindly refer to the chat box for the evaluation link. Once you have evaluated, you will be given a certificate. Our evaluation and processing of certificates are actually automated, and please make sure to type in the correct spelling of your name, since this will reflect on your e-certificates. Also, please be mindful in typing your email address because it is where you'll receive your certificates. We suggest that you keep a copy of your response in the evaluation for you to verify if you have made mistakes. So always have these particular settings. Send me a copy of my responses before you actually submit. Normally, it takes only 3 minutes or less after submitting to receive your certificate. Should you not be able to receive it by 5 p.m. today, just send a reply message with your concern to the confirmation email that we sent through our secretariat, Michael, msgalorio@up.edu.ph. We will manually send the certificate on the next working day. Thank you so much. And I do hope you actually learned a lot from our webinar today. This little offering is offered, no, or presented to you by the University of the Philippines, Cebu, in this little island of Cebu. And of course, with the association and invitation coming from the TPBBO and the active participation of UP Cebu Office of Student Affairs, especially where Sir Sip, our guidance specialist, is coming from. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a swell